EGX2016, the biggest UK games fair, was packed full of exciting new games, and even ones never seen or played before. Whilst I can't go over them all right now, I'm going to give you the ones that impressed me most and I think are worth checking out and keeping an eye on. It's worth mentioning some of the footage is from recording the screens on the floor of the event, so games will look better, and some I was not allowed to film as press, but got to play. Either way, here are my top upcoming games from EGX 2016. Tokyo 42 is an open-world top-down action-adventure that is an homage to the old 2D GTA games. Missions are picked up and you take on gang bosses, thugs, and any unfortunate underworld dwellers in this universe. With weapons ranging from a katana to sniper rifles, you can satisfy your chaotic desires. However, some missions do require elements of stealth or an escape plan. This is where the colourful tower blocks and sporadic balconies and stairs come in as you jump platform to platform to get away. You can also pan the camera to turn to the next side of the skyscraper, which is both visually satisfying and another gameplay element that spices up the platforming parts. Not to mention the generous colour palette and the Neo Tokyo vibe make it a work of art to admire on its own. I'd wholeheartedly suggest putting this one on your watch list. Yooka-Laylee is the love child of the Breakaway Rare developers who made the old N64 platforming classics like Banjo-Kazooie, and thousands of Kickstarter backers who long for the old 3D platformer. What we have is something that plays very much like a Banjo-Kazooie of the current gen. If you're unsure, basically it has loads of tongue-in-cheek humour, oodles of quirky characters, platform puzzles left, right and centre, along with a lovable main duo, Yooka the Chameleon and Laylee the Bat. The protagonists do play off each other with gags and also have lots of moves to get you around the map. For example, Laylee being able to fly and Yooka being able to roll into a ball to go up slopes. So if you're a 90s kid or someone who generally loved the N64 classics, or a newbie that loves platformers, keep your tabs on this gem. Aragami drops you into a Japanese temple where a woman requests your help in a vengeance. It turns out you have the lucky ability to go invisible in the darkness, becoming one with the shadow itself. Whilst it's extremely questionable whether you are one of the bad guys after you butcher Ronin guarding the Temple of Light, what is great about this game is it is all about stealth. The enemies can one-hit you with a light beam, so unless you're a superhuman with button pressing and timing, you'll be unable to kill them without sneaking and planning your route for a discreet execution. To add to that, the main character is a half shadow, half spirit ninja, looks the part of the Reaper of Death. Plus the general look of the game hits the feudal Japan tone very well, with great emphasis on their lighting system. Dishonored 2 is a AAA title that can also hit the stealth tone, although with a big list of new abilities available to the characters, chaos can be your route too. You can transform into a dark creature and rip enemies apart in new and gruesome ways, for example. I wasn't able to film any of the gameplay here, so I am using some of the Bethesda release stock footage, but it definitely is a solid game as Dishonored 1 was, and it was just generally a pleasure to play. This one is going to be one to pick up if you're looking for a steampunk romp where you could be stealthy on your path to vengeance, or a complete wrecking ball. And especially if you want to continue on from Dishonored 1. Horizon Zero Dawn may be one of the most hyped games at the moment, and it showed at EGX this year, with the queue reaching the entrance. But that wasn't all. The queue wasn't even to play the game, but just to get an appointment to come back, get in a smaller queue, and play it at a later time, because they were just so overwhelmed. Again, they didn't allow filming inside, so I'm using some older release footage, but I'll give you my lowdown. If you didn't know, Horizon Zero Dawn takes place in the future where robotic creatures have mysteriously taken over most of the planet's ecosystem. Most humans have gone, but what is left has devolved into a tribal system that partly relies on ancient weaponry crossed with robots' techs like explosive arrows and rope guns, and the demo allowed us to play in a small area of the open world. The combat system is definitely a joy with weak spots and weaknesses that you need to learn on enemies. Like one of the bigger mech dinos was extremely flammable. We also got to tame the mecha buffalo, which then showed us mounted combat was possible with your bow. Whilst I do think this is going to be a good game and one to watch out for, I think the hype might be a little too high for what has been showed thus far, with people referring to this to being like The Witcher 3. The demo and the theme of semi-survival meets the open world made me think it was a lot more like Far Cry Primal with creature mechs. Obviously not much of the story was revealed, and there weren't any mission systems shown, but I tried not to be too unrealistic in what you expect on the release date. Oh, and it is a PS4 exclusive. The Signal from Tolva, an indie game from the developers of Sir You Are Being Hunted, shares some of the similarities with Horizon Zero Dawn. The planet is dominated by robots, there is an ancient mystery to unravel, and there is an open world to explore. However, the sci-fi elements in Tolva are more of the forefront, with there being several robotic factions drawn to the signal of this planet and clashing with each other. Some of these factions are out for Enterprise, and others zealots who believe the signal to be holy, and the planet itself is covered in ancient war machines that hint of some devastating planet-side battles. You also are an outsider hacking robots on the surface of the planet to assume an identity as one of them to search for answers yourselves. And when you die, you take over another robot, and it doesn't have to be the same faction, so there's also the element of playing off the factions. There'll be lots of adventuring, battling as one of the factions, and it all looks set to be one of my favourite games of early 2017. 88 Heroes is a game obsessed with the number 88. 88 seconds to complete a map, 88 characters to play, and 88 lives till you lose. Each hero has their own ability that isn't necessarily the most useful, but always will be fun to try and tackle the level a bit differently. It's colourful, the music sounds great, and the evil genius overlaid on the bottom of the screen is always watching your progress, which is slightly ominous, but in a good way. And the gameplay is solid, if not a little chaotic depending on the hero you happen to get, but it will be a light-hearted game to release some steam for sure. Super Rude Bear Resurrection on the surface shares a lot of similarities with the ultra-hard platformer Super Meat Boy. The twist here is that every time you die in the map, one of your bear's corpses will be left in a gruesome pose where you last failed, often meaning that you can use your body as a platform to jump off, or if covering a swinging axe stop you from getting decapitated. It sounds horrible, but if you have a dark humour, you'll be sure to giggle. It also means that if you're not so good at these games, it's a lot less punishing. And if you let your kids play something that's slightly violent, this could be something that they could play at and get through the levels. But I'm not getting into the topic of violence in video games here, although I played a lot of violent video games when I was very young, and I'm not a mass murderer. But the game certainly isn't easy, and the developer was a speedrunner on Super Meat Boy, and showed me some of the runs on the last levels where things got extremely dicey, even with you dying. Also, the aim of the game is to get to the end without dying, and to be rewarded with a rainbow bear badge, which means that you have 0 deaths. So if you're into achievements, it can certainly be rewarding. Little Nightmares is a horror puzzle game that sort of blends Tim Burton with Little Big Planet. You traverse a nightmarish terrorscape as a little girl in a Macintosh. It's got lots of little physics-based puzzles, and there were some strong stealth elements too, with you hiding and running away from a grotesque chef. Not to mention how awesome their stand was, with them going around trying to scare you whilst playing the game. Obviously there's only a little shown in this demo, but the tone and the gameplay seem to be very promising. If you've been following the Democratic and Republican primaries and are also fascinated by presidential elections in the US and other leaders around the world, Political Animals puts you on the campaign trail to win an election. All of the candidates are animals to take the edge off any real-world comparisons, and the game revolves around your candidates' key issues like health or religion and their abilities. I went straight for the corrupt bear who would intimidate opposing canvassers. You also have a set of agents who go campaign, grease up key community members, or promote one of your key issues in an area. Each of these canvassers has a certain ability too, like the lawyer can get rid of scandals that happen in an area, which pop up if you do something bad, and at the end of every turn, you'll have an option to choose between 2 things happening, and often one will give you one of these cards. So it's extremely fun to try and swing the undecideds over to your cause, and if you like watching the count bars slowly rise and fall in the elections, you'll love this game. Oh My God Heads is a 4-player capture the flag type game where the flag is a head that has special abilities like shocking enemies or just exploding when you are holding it too long. With 2 teams of 2, you can guard or pass the head to your teammate, almost like basketball, whilst your opponents try and kill you before reaching the goal, and the maps have added a lot of flavour, with one having timed platforms that drop into lava, making it extremely manic to get across. This isn't a big flashy title, but if you're looking to plug in 4 controllers and have a quick action-packed round with some friends or online, this is definitely something to keep your tabs on. Mekazoo is a side-scrolling platformer game where you take a whole host or zoo of creatures, which in pairs you can switch between to overcome obstacles in a very stylized world. The game does occasionally shift in a 3D way, but overall the game combines lots of elements from other platformers to their one game, like speeding along curves Sonic style. Adventure Pals is a co-op side-scrolling adventure game that has a lot of the wonderful cartoony style of Adventure Time or Bravest Warriors. You're initially bizarrely given a giraffe in your backpack by your father in a coming-of-age ceremony, where he eventually gets kidnapped and you must go on an adventure to save him. The giraffe works a lot like Kazooie and Banjo-Kazooie, giving unlimited time to fly, but it can also grab onto certain points with its tongue to swing with. It's also got some limited RPG elements along the way, upgrading equipment and character. All in all, it's an extremely charming platforming experience that I'm sure will be great with a friend and for all ages. It's also worth noting, whilst I was trying it out on the floor, a mother and her two little kids came over and were poring over the game, and they were Kickstarters. So a mum or dad with a young kid, this might be a game to get them into the gaming world and have fun yourself at the same time. The Little Acre is a point-and-click adventure that could keep your desire for more Monkey Island at bay. The artwork is a masterpiece and looks like it has just come from a Disney movie. I'm not sure how it's all coded together, but it gives the impression at least that it's been painstakingly drawn at hand. But at the very least, that's the statement to how good it looks. There were elements of humour and all the characters were ones you could come to love, so if you're into point and clicks, this one might be worth checking out. Dead Pixels 2 is an action-packed side-scrolling zombie killathon with all the 80s VHS stylings that seems to have come around the explosion of Kung Fury, to which the developers suggested it was a 30-year cycle where adult professionals were now in charge of making media content they loved. Think Stranger Things 2. But back to the game, it was a very satisfying arcade experience, with the 80s music and VHS styles like the tape lines and TV border made it something hard to put down. This is another casual game that would be good to let some steam off or have some fun with friends. Snake Pass is a 3D platforming puzzle that relies completely on the physics of a snake, where you have to wrap around bars and environmental objects, balance and pull your awkward body across obstacles. You need to collect gems to unlock the next level, and it was definitely a fun experience. The only hang up is how much harder and what other elements they add in the future, but the demo is fun and silly and is something to keep an eye on. Finally, Shu is a side-scrolling platformer that plays a lot like the old side-scrolling Rayman, but it has a colourful Japanese-esque aesthetic. The main character has a party who can't go behind them and is a heartwarming sight. The gameplay too was solid, moving along your map, and in the demo the pace changed to be frantic, escaping a giant shadow monster that covered the whole map vertically. This platform is definitely another one to keep your eye on, if not just to look at it. So there were lots of other games that I have missed, and I haven't talked about the VR games, as I'm not 100% convinced that VR games have cracked the line between an experience and a great game yet, although things like Shopkeep and Tether definitely were pushing the boundary. Also, Battlefield 1 is a game that I am looking forward to a lot, but the show at EGX was pathetic. They put out the alpha from E3 that predates the open beta, and the PCs they provided could only run it with lower graphics, which just was disappointing. Anyway, what does everyone else think about these games? Is there anything that particularly caught your eye, or have I missed something that's very important? Be sure to let me know in the comment section below. Click the like button if you found this video helpful or interesting, and if you enjoyed the video and want to see more, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Until next time, Joshino.